Dear friends, welcome to my channel. I'm Berezovets. Today, we will discuss the threats that have intensified for NATO in the Baltic Sea, which is why Estonia has requested NATO to immediately increase the number of ships in the Baltic. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has already responded, promising to send more military ships soon and to increase the military presence of the North Atlantic Alliance in the Baltic Sea due to the clear threats from Russia and China. I want to remind you that this is already the fifth cable damage incident that has occurred in the Baltic. This time, a vessel that was sailing under the flag of the Cook Islands is suspected, and it damaged the ES Link 2 cable, which connects Estonia to Finland. In this regard, the Finnish border guard has already stormed and boarded this vessel. There is serious reason to believe that it acted on the instructions of Russia, and this was a deliberate act of sabotage. This was previously warned by the intelligence services of the United States. Azerbaijani authorities have made a statement for the first time regarding the crash of the Azal airline plane, which, according to most reputable sources, crashed as a result of a direct hit from a surface-to-air missile launched from Chechen territory. Azerbaijan Airlines flight crashed due to interference. Azerbaijan distrusts Russia's involvement. Baku avoids direct accusations. Kremlin denies missile involvement. However, he refrained from commenting on other details of the ongoing investigation. As is known, the Azerbaijani authorities have expressed distrust towards Russia, which sought to participate in the investigation of this tragic incident, as Russia has a direct connection to it. Nevertheless, for now, Baku is officially holding back from making direct accusations against Moscow. The Kremlin has refused to acknowledge that a Russian air defense missile struck the Azerbaijan Airlines plane. This was stated today by Putin's press secretary, Dmitry Peskov. The Kremlin has refused to acknowledge that a Russian air defense missile struck the Azerbaijan Airlines plane. This was stated today by Putin's press secretary, Dmitry Peskov. In the US, they have seen signs that the Baku-Grozny flight was ultimately shot down by a Russian air defense missile. This was stated by the coordinator for strategic communications at the White House, John Kirby. Ukrainian military intelligence, together with Ukrainian defense forces and the security service of Ukraine, carried out a successful strike that resulted in the elimination of 3 commanders of the Russian southern grouping. This was announced today in a statement from the main intelligence directorate. South Korean intelligence has reported that the North Korean soldier captured the day before has died from injuries that were incompatible with life. Earlier information about the North Korean soldier who was captured was spread by a military portal, as well as the South Korean news agency Yonhap. However, all of this could turn out to be the final outcome of Operation Cover. Deutsche Welle conducted a major investigation into the sabotage acts in the Baltic that were carried out jointly by the intelligence services of Russia and the People's Republic of China. And the New York Times reports that the Ukrainian army has only about 50 attack missiles left in its arsenals, which means they will be used more cautiously. Friends, we will talk about all of this later. So, Estonia has asked NATO to deploy a deterrent fleet in the Baltic Sea after the 5th disruption of underwater cables. This was stated by the Prime Minister of Estonia, Kaja Kallas. The consultations requested by the Estonian government will take place through Article 4 of the North Atlantic Alliance in the near future. The article provides for discussions on threats to the security of the territorial integrity or political independence of any of the countries that are part of the North Atlantic Alliance. Mark Rutte, NATO's Secretary General, stated that the alliance will assist Estonia in protecting critical infrastructure in the White Sea. NATO supports its allies and condemns any attacks on critical infrastructure, Rutte stated. The Prime Minister of Estonia also stated that NATO needs to act preventively in order to protect its infrastructure, intercept vessels, and identify the culprits as quickly as possible. The Finnish police have boarded a vessel. The oil tanker Thunder Eagle S, which sails under the flag of the Cook Islands, left the port of St. Petersburg and was supposed to arrive at the port of Said in Egypt on January 9th. The Finnish police have already opened a case related to the charge of vandalism with aggravating circumstances and will investigate it in the near future. Earlier, cables between Estonia and Finland, as well as between Finland and Germany, were damaged. Another cable connected Lithuania and Sweden. Thus, Deutsche Welle conducted a major investigation during which it uncovered numerous facts involving ships chartered by owners in Russia and the People's Republic of China. The most high-profile case was the severing of a cable that was also on the bottom of the Baltic Sea, which was carried out by the Chinese vessel Aipeng 3, which was making dangerous maneuvers near both incident sites at the specified time. That is, it is involved in the severing of two cables at once. China, moreover, refused to cooperate with European investigators, stating that they can only act as observers, while all investigative activities must be conducted solely by Chinese state prosecutors. In this regard, Sweden's Foreign Minister Maria Malmer Stenergard stated that the Swedish criminal investigation is unfortunately impossible. She also expressed regret over the unwillingness of the Chinese authorities to assist in conducting the relevant investigative activities. Well, this actually just reveals the criminal nature and confirms the theory regarding the malicious actions of the Chinese authorities and, of course, the Russians and their special services in carrying out such sabotage activities. American officials, representatives of the American intelligence community, had warned European NATO allies several months earlier about the increase in Russian military activity and sabotage operations, particularly in the Baltic and the North Sea. Additionally, American intelligence officials stated that a specialized unit has been created within the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. Clearly, it operates under the main intelligence directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Russia, a special unit of the GRU, which has been established to carry out sabotage aimed at damaging the critical communication infrastructure of NATO countries. And now we are already seeing the concrete consequences. The key question is how quickly and why it was so fast that Russia managed to create an effectively functioning unit, choosing the simplest and most effective mechanism, that is, without the need to sink submarines or use other devices, bathyscaphs, and so on. This would naturally attract a lot of attention. They found a simple door-like method using a cheap Kalashnikov automatic rifle. The ship, usually a large tonnage vessel, drops an anchor to the bottom and simply drags it along the presumed location of the fiber optic cables. And so sooner or later it catches and severs them. The method is as simple as it is effective and cheap, most importantly, and we see that despite the obviousness of the fact that these operations are being uncovered and understood by everyone, they continue to sever cables. I'll repeat, this is already the fifth cable that has been damaged in this way. Restoring it takes time. And the most important thing is that Russia is testing the destruction of NATO's communication infrastructure. And what will be next in line if this channel is not stopped? Then they will start severing cables, connecting other important NATO allies in the region, particularly the United Kingdom. And next we could be talking about the transatlantic cables leading to the United States. Obviously, current operations should be viewed solely as a warm-up before more serious operations. And most importantly, I repeat once again, despite all the obviousness and simplicity of these sabotage and crimes, the European members of NATO cannot stop this. The only positive fact is the Finnish border police bravely boarded a Cook Islands vessel. This is the right action by a small country, a new NATO member. They didn't get bogged down with jurisdiction and other issues, they just boarded it and conducted an investigative operation, inspecting the ship right on board. This is the right action taken by a single, relatively small country, and it's worth noting that this is a new NATO member. Let me remind you, Finland became a NATO member only in 2024, and how boldly does it act? This is an example that other old NATO members should follow, but unfortunately it sounds like the cries of a voice in the wilderness. We fully understand that countries like Germany, despite their economic power, are rather dwarfs in military terms. It's not about the amount of weaponry, but rather about the guts and political will that the military political leadership of the country possesses, unfortunately with deep regret. Meanwhile, the Finnish publication, quotes NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who has already promised Finnish President Alexander Stubb that the alliance will soon deploy military vessels to the Baltic Sea due to the rising threat. He stated that he spoke with Finnish Prime Minister Stubb and promised him assistance in investigating the possible sabotage of NATO's underwater cables, which will increase its presence in the Baltic Sea. NATO's actions must be quick and decisive. A dagger operation in the style of what has been carried out. That's how we should act, exactly in that manner. Another story, a tragic story, unfortunately, this week, which is being covered by all the world's media. I dedicated a separate segment to it regarding the crash of the Azerbaijan Airlines plane flight Baku-Grozny, which happened 2 days ago. The Minister of Digital Development and Transport of Azerbaijan, Rashad Nabiev, is the first official from Azerbaijan to publicly express confidence that the plane crashed due to external factors. This is the first official statement of this kind from the Azerbaijani authorities. He stated that both the passengers and the flight attendants reported hearing an explosion at the moment when the aircraft was over Grozny. He stated that from social media footage circulated by the media, one of the passengers sustained injuries to her arm and leg, and there were visible punctures on the wing of the plane, as well as damage from various sharp objects inside the fuselage. Moreover, he stated that the passengers, including, and he mentioned this intentionally, citizens of Russia, confirmed that during the flight over Grozny, 3 explosions were heard. However, what weapon was used for this intervention will be determined by the investigation. Minister Rashad Nabiev has stepped away from the details. At the same time, the Kazakh authorities continue to stick to the Russian version about an alleged explosion of a gas-oxygen cylinder on the plane. The most surprising thing is that this was stated by an air traffic controller who, pay attention, was in Rostov. Look at where Rostov is and where Grozny is. Well, unfortunately, I don't want to. It is even difficult to comment on such abomination, which continues to be broadcast by officials of Kazakhstan, who have shown themselves to be in the most unseemly light. By the way, Ukrainian President Zelensky expressed condolences to the Azerbaijani people, and President Ilham Aliyev stating that for Russia such military crimes are, unfortunately, natural. Of course, the Kremlin continues to deny it. They persist in the tactic of, "It's not me, the cow isn't mine." In particular, Dmitry Peskov refused to apologize and declined to comment on the version regarding the Russian air defense missile hitting the Azerbaijani Airlines plane. He is confident that until an official investigation is conducted, the Russian authorities have no intention of making any comments. "We saw it," Peskov stated. He is confident that until an official investigation is conducted, the Russian authorities have no intention of making any comments. "We saw it," Peskov stated, "in Russia. So I repeat, there's nothing more to add to what I've already said." This is how he was asked to comment on the statement made by the deputy from Derguzan. The Parliament of Azerbaijan, Rasim Musabekov, for example, recently pointed out the involvement of Russia in the crime that led to the death of more than 30 passengers and crew members. Essentially, everything has now boiled down to one key version. In the crime that led to the death of more than 30 passengers and crew members, basically everything has now come down to one key version. So all versions have already been put forward. I mentioned this in my review as well. I suggested that, it's obvious that it was a surface-to-air missile, but which system it came from should have been clarified by aviation specialists. And it all came down to the version that this surface-to-air missile was launched from the Russian Pantsir S-1 system. During the approach for landing in the capital of Chechnya, however, the aviation security specialists I managed to talk to claimed that the Russian Shoyi radar operator could not have made a mistake. On the radar, a passenger plane and a drone look so distinct that they can't be confused. So it was it was completely impossible to launch at the plane instead of the drone to confuse them. So it was like either it was a tragic accident, or the second version is that it was a deliberate incident. Here's the question. If the launch came from Chechnya, was Kadyrov trying to set Putin up in this way? Since Kadyrov is untouchable, it's clear who he is. He doesn't move without Putin, so Putin will be in a tough spot in this story. Wasn't he trying to do it this way? Kadyrov wants to set Putin at odds with Azerbaijan and accordingly with Turkey. That's the version I have. It looks, of course, like a conspiracy theory. It looks illogical, but I wouldn't discount it since we are dealing with complete war criminals and intriguers who are ready to do, in fact, anything. Kadyrov's failure to secure his desired outcome has been reported by both Western and Russian opposition media. He hoped that his support for the Russian group in Syria, supposedly negotiated with new transitional authorities, would ensure the safe evacuation of Russian military from Khmimim Air Base and Tartus Naval Base. In return, Kadyrov aimed to gain control over Wildberries, Russia's largest marketplace, valued at several $billion, and in exchange for this, Kadyrov was counting on gaining full control over the largest Russian marketplace, Wildberries, which is valued at several $billion. As we know, Kadyrov didn't get what he wanted, and as a very vengeful person, I should remind you that he recently declared blood vengeance against Kerimov, one of his enemies. So for him, it will undoubtedly be completely impossible to forget such an incident. Let me reiterate, this is just a version. So for him, it will undoubtedly be completely impossible to forget such an incident. I'll say it again, this is just a version. However, let's not completely dismiss it. The United States is almost certain that the Azerbaijan Airlines plane was shot down by a Russian surface-to-air missile. This was stated by John Kirby, the coordinator for strategic communications at the White House. The US, he stated, has already seen initial signs indicating that the Azerbaijan Airlines plane that crashed in Kazakhstan was shot down by Russian air defense forces. Kirby emphasized that the investigation into the cause of the plane crash is still ongoing, and symptomatically, the Americans offered their help to Baku. By the way, Baku rejected the money offered by Kadyrov. That was an absolutely correct and honorable act. This was a statement from the administration of the president of Azerbaijan, saying that Azerbaijan will take care of the victims of its citizens, and that it naturally does not need any handouts from Kadyrov. In addition, Azerbaijan opposed the involvement of Russian investigators in the investigation of the plane crash, and the black boxes will be sent to the manufacturer Embraer in Brazil. Two factors: the quality of the Embraer plane. It flew over 500 kilometers. There was a runway. It flew over 500 kilometers before being hit by a surface-to-air missile. And indeed, it didn't make it to the runway. It crashed in Aktau, but nevertheless, it's completely impossible, and the Russian authorities wanted so badly to cover their tracks, they intentionally sent it across the Caspian Sea to the opposite shore, hoping that the ship will sink. Along with it, all traces will be covered up, all traces of the crime will be erased. And the second reason is the super professionalism of the crew members, the flight engineer, the flight attendants, everyone. First of all, of course, the pilots, they accomplished the impossible. They saved the lives of half the crew members and passengers. This is just an unreal level act of heroism that definitely needs to be talked about. In every tragedy, there are always heroes. These heroes are the pilots. Meanwhile, the military intelligence of Ukraine reported the successful completion of an operation in which 3 high-ranking Russian officers were eliminated. Commander of the 1st Battalion of the 135th Motorized Rifle Regiment of the Russian Armed Forces, Captain Nagorny. Next, the Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence, the Head of Intelligence for the 135th Motorized Rifle Regiment of the Russian Armed Forces, Captain Kramalyov. Commander of the Air Defense Battery of the 4th Guards Military Base of the Russian Armed Forces, Captain Fomin. 5 units of enemy vehicles were also destroyed. This happened as a result of being hit by HIMARS missiles. Ukrainian military intelligence operatives participated in the operation. Intelligence operatives of the Security Service of Ukraine, the drone systems of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the operational group of the Tavria troops. We need more news like this. Also, yesterday, the military project reported that the first North Korean soldier was captured. This message spread like wildfire across the entire territory of Kanalo. And today, the South Korean agency Yonhap confirmed the information that he was captured. There's even a photo of him, and I'm sure it's not difficult to identify him. And not only the authorities of North Korea have identified him, I'm sure that both our intelligence and the South Korean intelligence already know his true identity. But today there was a report from Yonhap citing South Korean intelligence that this soldier allegedly died from his injuries. South Korean intelligence also reported where he was from. North Korea has sent its best special forces from the 11th Corps called Storm here. More than 3,000 of them have died or been injured in the Kursk region. And Bloomberg writes today that Ukraine will be able to hold the enclave in the Kursk region, at most until spring 2025. Nevertheless, it's critically important to exchange these territories which have been brought under control in the Kursk region for territories in Ukraine that are occupied by the Russian army, because this is critically important. And finally, returning to the missile strikes on Russian military facilities, the New York Times writes today in an article that Ukraine has reduced the use of, in particular, ATACMS missiles, as there are about 50 high-precision ATACMS left before Donald Trump's arrival. It was previously reported that more than 500, around half a thousand, had been transferred, but this information may have been intentionally leaked, intended as a disinformation tactic. So, it's extremely difficult to calculate the actual number of missiles that were transferred and used. I don't know, not knowing how many there actually were, like in the case of that North Korean soldier, we just don't know. Why was his photo leaked, and then information appears that he is not there, that he died? And whether he actually passed away is still a big question. That's the news we have for you today, friends. Thank you for watching this video. Take care of yourselves, subscribe to the channel, like, share, and comment on the stream. Don't forget to recommend the video to your friends and acquaintances. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the armed forces of Ukraine, glory to the Ukrainian Special Forces, glory to the Ukrainian Territorial Defense Forces. With you as Major of the Ukrainian Army, Taras Berezovets. See you soon, friends. Bye-bye.